got into real estate investing kind of as the market was taking a downturn, 2010, 2011 timeframe. It's been a journey. I think every experienced real estate investor has one regret. You're not a real estate investor, you're a private money raiser.
Hey, what's up, John?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing really good, man. Doing really good. Yeah. How about you?
Doing good.
All right. Yeah. All right. We have a couple of people on the call. It's like the last week of summer, so a lot of people
I
are
know,
out
right?
traveling on vacations and stuff. So, but yeah, we'll make. I'm excited about this call for my own personal reasons. I do turnkey, and then I'm really curious about kind of what you're noticing in the business. So, John, just give us a little intro about yourself. Like, where do you live? What kind of investing do you do, and how long you've been investing for? And then we can jump into the Q&A session.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been investing, I've been in real estate for about 17 or 18 years, ever since I was 20 years old. I started out as a, traditional real estate agent, driving Miss Daisy around on Sunday to open houses and all that fun stuff. So been doing that for a very, very long time. I got into real estate investing kind of as the market was taking a downturn, 2010, 2011 timeframe. It's been a journey, right? We all know what that's like for the most part. And essentially, I've kind of gone through the stages of an investor, right? You start out wholesaling, rehabbing, and then what really kind of stuck with me was the buy and hold process.
Mm.
I think every experienced real estate investor has one regret, and that one regret is they wish they would have held more of the properties that they wound up selling.
One
Um,
hundred
and
percent.
I'm no different than any of that. But for me personally, I got really addicted to buying rental properties, which is, I guess, a good addiction to have. I measure everything now in rental property purchases, right? Like, oh, I could buy a car. Well, that's actually another rental property. Or I could buy this. Well, that's halfway to another rental property. So, one of my focuses now with my real estate investment business is we still do fix and flips and wholesale, specifically in Connecticut. And then we do acquisitions in like Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, specifically for rental properties. So my business is designed around doing both rentals and fix and flips and wholesale deals. So that's how we're set up now. And in addition to that, I have my own um, education program called Rental Property Pro, where we 100% focus on helping people build rental property portfolios. No active business investing, just all passive
Right.
business investing. Yep.
So you're investing, doing flips in Connecticut and some buy and hold turnkey stuff in southern states. And
Mhm.
which market do you actually live in, or it's all out of state?
Everything is remote. So I
Okay.
live in San Diego, in Southern California here, and everything that I do, my closest rental property is like 1,600 miles away. So we do everything remotely for sure. Yep.
Got it. Cool. And is that because you were living in San Diego and you're like, the numbers are not going to make sense here? And then how did you come across like Connecticut, which is like exact opposite of like,
I know.
where you live?
So I'm originally from the East Coast, so that's how Connecticut came into play.
Okay.
So that's how I have a relationship to that market. And then in terms of rental properties, you hit the nail right on the head, right? San Diego is a beautiful place to live. It's not a beautiful place to invest, at least if you like money. If you like losing money, then sure, you can invest here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, everything that I like to do long-term investing wise is going to be in the Midwest, right? Way more favorable pricing. Um, you know, rent to price ratio is way more exciting to me, at least. So that's
Yeah.
that's where that kind of came from.
Cool. And turnkey is a very niche business. Like, how did you get into that? Was that by design or it just happened by accident for you?
Yeah, so first off, turnkey, that word gets thrown around a lot. I think turnkey should have a very specific kind of connotation to it in terms of what you're getting for the service that you're paying for, if you will. And we can talk about that a little bit later. But I started my rental property investing, you know, path by doing turnkey, right? I do both turnkey and burr investing right now. Just because, I've had the ability to build a team. But, when I started my real estate investing company, I'd at the end of a quarter, at the end of the year, or what have you, I'd have money left over, right? And I had money that I wanted to invest. And as a business owner, we get so caught up in running the business, sometimes we forget to invest. And I knew I wanted to invest in real estate, but I didn't really have the time, effort, or energy to kind of put into establishing myself in another market and doing all these things, which would allow me to invest and make a good return. So that kind of went into the research of finding someone that could do it for me. So basically, I was just like, hey, if I can go and buy $130,000 house and put 20% down, all I have to think about is coming up with that down payment, and I'm getting a fully renovated, cash flowing, professionally managed property ready to go that I can hold on to. So that was the thought and how I kind of got into it. I was introduced to the turnkey kind of methodology uh, a little bit by chance through Fortune Builders. If any of you guys have ever heard of or known Fortune Builders and Dan, Paul, JD, Conrad, I actually personally ran after I got into the turnkey worlds. I started talking with the owners of Fortune Builders, and they wanted to start offering that to their students. So essentially, I built a turnkey division inside of Fortune Builders as well too, I think we helped somewhere in a ballpark of 2,500 investors buy turnkey rental properties over the course of like 8 or 10 years. So it's been
Wow.
pretty good.
Are you still doing turnkey? Because, with the higher interest rate, I mean, it's always very dependent on the interest rate for the turnkey side of the business. Are you still doing that? What have you noticed with the turnkey market?
Yeah, so it really all depends on the provider that you're working with, right? There are turnkey providers or what we call operators out there that you know understand their client, right? As I said, turnkey gets thrown around a lot, and turnkey is sometimes this mixture of, oh, it's just a house, and then you have to find your own management company, or maybe someone flips the house and then sells it to you, and then they hand it off to a third party management. But the companies that get it, the companies that do it at a high level, right? They're buying, renovating, selling 300 to 500 properties a year. The companies that have management in house, construction teams in house, right? They built this 30 $40 million business based on selling turnkey. They understand their client. One of the teams that I work with, they've partnered with a bank. You can still go and buy a property from this team and get a 5% interest rate on 20% down, 30-year fixed mortgage, right? Because they know that's what their clients need in order to make the numbers work for their deals. So that's what they've put together. So you can still buy at good rates and get really good double-digit returns, even in this marketplace.
So someone who's looking to, like, for us, Turnkey has been like, it's added another exit strategy for us
Hmm.
as an investor, because now, and then with the interest rate coming down, I think that's going to become another
Oh yeah.
option for us. Like last 6 months to a year, we haven't really looked at Turnkey unless it's like a really good 2 3 unit property. But every time we look at a property, we look at, okay, can we flip it? Can we sell it as a turnkey? Or can we keep it as a rental? So Turnkey definitely adds another exit to our pipeline. But with the interest rate higher, it wasn't really a viable option for her. But interest rates starting to come down. It's amazing, at least in our experience, how much more money you can make doing turnkey and how much less headache you have. We have a property management in-house, but you don't necessarily need it. You can always work with a third-party property management company and just add that another exit strategy to it, with investors that you're working with. But someone who's looking to do this, what's the best way for them to find buyers for these turnkey properties in the market that they're in?
Like, meaning if they want to start offering
Yeah.
turnkey properties to an end consumer.
Right.
I mean, to be honest with you, the best way to do this and connect with a large scale of investors all across the United States is Bigger Pockets. Bigger Pockets is probably one of the number one, if not the number one, turnkey marketing hub and resource in the world.
Right.
All of the largest turnkey companies in the country, along with everybody else, all started sold, cut their teeth on bigger pockets with just providing value, offering support, and l- that's where all the 9 to 5 people that have jobs that are looking to invest in real estate go to
Yeah.
find resources.
Yeah, that's been honestly, I didn't even know about the turnkey business until I was on a Bigger Pockets podcast and people
Mhm,
started reaching out to me. I was just sharing kind of what I'm doing. And they're like, hey,
mhm,
can I buy your property that you have rented out? And that's kind
mhm.
of how I was, got into turnkey. So yeah, Bigger Pockets definitely the number one source. It's crazy. We still have people. I mean, this was a podcast I did 7, 8 years ago. I still have people reaching out to me from that podcast that I did 7, 8 years ago, wanting to buy properties
Yeah,
from
it's
us.
crazy,
Like,
right?
yeah, it's crazy. And then, but if you actively post on it, it's a great way to get cash buyers. What about like someone who doesn't have their own property management company? What's the best way to just work with a third party company to add that as as a resource? Because you really need to have the management like ideally in-house, but unless you get to like 50, 60 units, it's kind of hard to justify that cost in-house. How would you go about that?
Yeah, kind of a few kind of key KPIs for a lot of property managers or turnkey providers, right? For me personally, as an investor, when I'm going and interviewing or looking for a turnkey provider, what I want is a team that's what I call vertically integrated. So they do everything from acquiring the home to renovating it to placing the resident to then managing it. And the reason why I like that is because, if the property is not in a good neighborhood or the renovation is not done well, the management team's going to be pissed, right? So, everyone's kind of accountable for doing their job correctly so the system works well. All right.
Yeah.
For you guys, most of you will be on the purchase and renovation side of things. Always, always, always go into this aspect of thinking about repeat buyers. If you want to get into the turnkey game as an inventory provider or a property provider, the majority of your business long term is going to come from repeat buyers. So on the front end, you want to create a great property in a great neighborhood and a great experience, right? And then long term, the management team, right? The management team is the individuals or the people that your client will be interacting the most and for the longest. All right. So vetting that property management team, if you are going to go third party, is going to be huge, just to ensure that they are going to provide you with the service that you want. And property management, it's an interview process, right? Like you're just not calling someone, you're going there with a set of questions, sitting down, meeting with the team, doing an evaluation of their business and their business model. And then I always like to say, inspect what you expect, right? So I'll go out and look at the properties that they have available um, for rent. I'll, call to see how long does it take me to get into one of the properties to view it as a potential renter, right? What's their current condition as they sit on the market, right? Because that's going to be your client's property or your property at some point in the future. So always inspect what you expect and really do the due diligence, that as much due diligence as you can.
Yeah, and it's so true, especially in the turnkey business. If you have a good experience upfront, you get so many repeat buyers. I've had investors that have purchased 25, 30 properties from us. And it's very common for them. It's we have very few investors that will just buy one property.
Hmm.
Almost all of them will buy multiple properties because they're looking to build their rental portfolio in an area. So if you provide them good service upfront and you have a good management team on the back end, they're gonna just keep coming back. And not only themselves, they'll have their other family and friends, they'll come in and invest with you also. So that's a huge, huge part of the business. And at least in our experience, we've noticed the clients that are the biggest headaches are the ones that only have one property. The
Absolutely.
investors
Because
that have multiple properties, I'm sure you've noticed the same thing in your business also.
Well, the people with one property, they live and die by one
Right.
property, right? They're either
Yeah.
having the best week of their life or month of their life, or it's the
Yeah.
worst, right? Because
Yeah.
they're paying the mortgage on the property. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, with the clients that come to me to buy turnkey, I always set the expectation like, hey, if you can only buy one property today, that's okay, right? But we want to make sure that our plan is to buy multiple. We're building a portfolio. So we'll lay that out, that buying schedule, if you will, if they can only buy one today, just to make sure that they're in the mindset that, one is not acceptable, right? Because your experience is going to be way better if you do multiple.
Yeah. And yeah, we tell the same thing because if you own enough properties, you have to look at the average rate of return. If you just have one, you may get lucky and the property performs exceptionally well.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, you could have the property where it just because of the nature of the business, you may have a tenant comes in, leaves after 2 months, and then you may get another tenant who stays for 3 months and leave. But if you buy enough properties, some are going to perform exceptionally well, some are going to not perform up to the expectation, and some are going to be just average, but your overall portfolio will perform really well. It's just kind of like investing in mutual funds. Some stocks will do really well, some not so
Yeah.
well, most will do average. And then if you average out good, yeah, we had one investor who was just being a big headache. And then, he reached out to me personally. He said, hey, the tenant moved out after like 7 months. You should reimburse me for this and that. I said, but, we did our due diligence. We give 6 month warranty. I said, we can help you with some of the expenses, but
Hmm.
say it'll be best if you find a different property management company.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I thought you were going to work with us, give me some discount. I'm like, no, if you're not happy, then you should go find a different property management company. And it's the owner with one property that have been
Oh, yeah.
an issue with us. Yeah. But
Yeah.
one thing we've noticed is the property management business is one business where no one is happy with you. The
Not the tenant, not the
not the
investor,
10.
right? Yeah,
Yeah, they
exactly.
always have something to
So
complain
true.
about. Yeah, it's such
Yeah.
such an interesting business. But with the turnkey business, with the interest rate, the where they are like still over 6.5%, where do you see the market going? That like we were definitely our number one preference when we bought properties was always to sell them as turnkey. They were
Hmm.
higher profit. You don't have to have an agent involved for the most
Yeah.
deal, and you could make more money, less headache in the long term, and then you had repeat buyers. But once the interest rate started going up, like all of our buyers basically are just sitting on the sidelines. Like, where do you see the market going from here for turnkey buyers?
Yeah. A few things here to speak on your last point, right? If you buy 10, turnkey is a very good process and system to easily get into rental properties. It's not perfect, right? So I always tell my investors, hey, if you buy 10 turnkey properties, one of them's going to suck, right? So
Yeah,
there's going to be issues. But we don't know when that one's going to come. Is it going to come
yeah,
on your first one or your 10th one or your fifth one, right? So we have to go in with that mindset, right? This is a numbers game. Now, in terms of where is the market going to go, they're going to bring rates down. I mean, Bank of America just announced the other day that they're already pricing in and assuming that the Fed is going to lower interest rates by 0.5% in September and again in November. So we'll probably see an interest rate drop of 1 point by the end of the year. So interest rates are going to come back down. BlackRock is estimating that for every 1% that interest rates drop, you're going to see a million new buyers enter into the
wow,
buying pool for real estate. So it's going to go through the roof, right? And you're always paying a premium, guys. Like you're either paying a premium price or premium in rate, right? You just get to choose which one, right? I prefer to pay a premium in rate, right? Because if I can buy a property at a slight discount at an 8% interest rate, guess what? In 2, 3, 4 years, I can refinance that interest rate. I can't refinance what I paid for the home. So when interest rates are in the twos, you're paying a premium on price. When the interest rates are high, you're paying a premium on interest rate, but you're getting usually some type of discount in price, right? So your
yeah.
choice. I like to pay a premium interest rate, so I'm still buying. Or I'm working with teams that are still providing a discounted interest rate. Either way, that's always the way that I look at it.
And then where have you noticed are the best markets to invest in for turnkey? We have a lot of investors that are doing nationwide, and turnkey typically I've noticed like the best markets are Midwest. Is that what you've noticed in your experience? Like, Indiana, Kansas, St. Louis market, are those the best
Yeah,
markets in?
I mean, the Midwest for sure. I think the Midwest is getting smaller and smaller and smaller based on certain things that are happening across the country, whether it's pricing. insurance or property taxes, right? So for
Mm.
example, Florida and Texas, Kansas, they used to be awesome buy and hold markets, right? But between, insurance premiums doubling, property taxes quadrupling and property prices doubling, right? It doesn't cash flow very well any longer. But still, like Missouri, Tennessee, Mississippi, Kentucky, Indiana, still obviously, all of those states are still really solid for rental property investing. Arkansas, so that's where I like to hang my hat as much as possible. Is in the Midwest. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you also look at, again, not to get political, but at least in my experience, I've noticed like the red states tend to perform much better as rental properties versus investing in like blue states. When I started investing, I used to live in Chicago. There were
Yep.
really good deals to be had, but the only reason I did not invest in Chicago was just the landlord laws. They were horrible. It could take you up to a year to get the tenant out, and even after a year, you may have to negotiate and give some money to the tenant just to get them out. That was the only reason I decided to invest in Indiana. Do
Yep.
you look at that, or you just go strictly based on like the cash flow numbers?
Great question. It's actually one of the first things that I have all of my students look at whenever they're deciding on an investment market is to kind of see what, I don't want to say politics, but see what state laws are, right?
Right.
A red state is usually a little bit more investor friendly or at bare minimum fair, right?
Sure.
Whereas a blue state is usually a bit more resident friendly, if you will. In a perfect world, I like to always invest in a investor friendly market, which is normally a red state. Do I own rental properties in blue states? Absolutely. But in that vein, at least you know what you're getting into, right? You can
Right.
maximize your earnest money deposit, like in all of my rental properties that I own in resident friendly states. I have the state maximum for EMDs, right? I'm very stringent on my qualification processes just so that I'm, really kind of holding their feet to the fire in terms of making sure they perform on the lease.
Got it. Yeah. No, I agree. Like it was
Yeah.
just that's I got that information when I first started investing on bigger pockets. Like that was pretty
Yep.
much anybody experience that just invest in, make sure if you're buying rental properties, be in landlord friendly states.
Yep.
It's going to be,
Absolutely.
even if you get lower return upfront, but it's going to be such a less headache dealing with. Even during COVID, when we were investing, we could still get tenants out like 2 and 3 months. Typically,
Yep.
we get, evict a tenant in about a month. But even during COVID, it was like 2, 3 months. We're still able to get tenants out. That made a difference. And then if you were investing in a market like Illinois, oh my God, I can't even imagine how much money we would be losing on those deals, and
Oh,
then the headache we would have.
awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also want to talk to you about like raising money. So someone who's
Mhm.
investing in turnkey properties, I mean, of course, you need all it's flipping, but instead of flipping to homeowners, you're flipping to other investors. So it's a
Mhm.
still very high. It's a business where you need a lot of cash. How would you go about like raising money for these properties? What's the best way to do that? Like go down the route of private money, hard money, whatever you notice work really well for turnkey investors.
Um, you know, there's a few things going on in the market right now that I've been, lucky enough to kind of experience and be a part of from a hard money standpoint, as well as, I've always been a private money guy as well too. So the easiest way to get funding is to do, for an individual project is to find a private money lender, right? Finding them can be a little bit difficult, but then normally the qualification factors needed to get the deal funded is really easy. And the easiest way to do that is just always be raising money, right? You're not a real estate investor, you're a private money raiser. That's your job definition, right? When someone asks you what you do, I help everyday people earn double digit returns, fully back guaranteed by real estate, right? Like that's what you do. I'm not an investor. I help everyday people earn double digit returns, fully backed and guaranteed by real estate, right? Like that's the question, or that's the answer. And we're always, always, always raising money. So, keep that at front of mind. There's a race to the bottom right now with a lot of hard money lenders, in terms of how much they'll funds and the interest rates that they provide. At least that's been my experience over the last 6 to 8 months. A really good private money or hard money lender that's I've been working with is Kiavi. They're huge. I'm sure you guys have all heard of them. If not, go check them out. Right now, Kiavi offers a Kiavi Pro plan. Basically, if you've done 5 deals in the last 2 years, 24 months, they'll offer you a $3 million line of credit. I obviously qualify for that. So I've just been using their $3 million line of credit to snag all the properties that I can, renovate them, and refinance them out on the back end. If you haven't done
What are
5 years,
what are the
what's that?
terms on that? Sorry, what are the terms on that?
So it is $3 million. Every time that you make a loan from that $3 million, it's a 12-month loan. And every property you borrow against, it's 9.25 and
Okay,
2 points.
that's not bad.
It's great. I
Yeah,
think it's maybe 1 point, 1 or 2 points. I
yeah,
can't remember.
yeah. That's not bad at
The
all.
interest rate will be determined based on your credit. I think the highest credit or the highest interest rate's like 11.25, which is still cheap,
Right.
in this world. If you haven't done 5 deals in the last 2 years, they still offer 90% of purchase and 100% of renovation. So, hard money lenders are just kind of racing to get market superiority, if you will. So take advantage of it as an investor. I mean, that's huge at this point in time. And then thirdly, what I teach a lot of my students is if they really want to go down that 100% financing route and they don't have the ability to really seek a private money lender, I'll use a combination of hard money lending, right? Like Kiavi, which they'll bring 90% of the purchase to the table, and I'll finish off that last 10 to 15% with business funding. So go out, get 50, 60 grand in business funding from like a Fund and Grow or MB Capital Solutions or something like that. And then there's your 100% financing for your property. So that's what I've been doing, having my students do.
Yeah, I'm in a couple of masterminds, and Kiavi is like a sponsor in those masterminds, and they've been pushing their 100% loans really hard
Yeah, they're doing
this
like
year.
like you're in Collective Genius,
Invest
right?
Collective Genius and Investor Fuel, and they've been
Yeah, they
like
do a
really
hundred
pushing.
hundred with you guys,
Yeah,
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 which
yeah.
is
So
stupid, like
yeah,
amazing.
it's really good. Like it's free money that you're getting. Like you don't
It
have to
is.
put any.
It's free
And
money.
yeah, yeah. And given where the market is right now, we're noticing our flips, especially in the price point, if they're in the median, at least in our market, like 150 to 250 under 300 price point, they're
Yep.
moving pretty quickly. There's still pretty decent demand, even with the interest rate where they are. If
Yep.
it's a good house, especially in our market, if the rental would be pretty comparable to what the mortgage would come out to, those houses move pretty quickly. Or that's the price point we stay in. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the same thing. I mean, we try to keep our ARVs for any of our rental or any of our flips that we do below 350,
Yeah.
and we haven't seen anything sit over a month
Yeah. Yeah.
at a price point below 350. Um,
Are most of your buyers FHA at that price point?
it's probably 50-50. Yeah,
Okay.
probably 50.
Yeah. So
Um, one thing that I've saw, I'll give you guys an example of like where private versus hard money is. I mean, it used to never be this way, right? You'd wind up paying 4 points and 13% with a hard money lender. I'm doing an Airbnb. It's a big purchase. It's a $900,000 purchase and an $80,000 renovation. I was raising at 10% from private money lenders, and Kiavi came to me and was like, we'll give you 820,000 for the purchase. We'll give you all the renovation. We'll charge you 9.25. It's like, well,
that's
all right,
crazy.
sure, great, thanks. Later.
Wow. That's
Yep.
crazy. All right. Lewis has a question. Can you tell us if Fund and Grow is worth looking into or better to do oneself?
Shrad, do you mind if I give a personal recommendation? Is that cool?
Yeah, yeah, totally cool.
Cool. So Lewis, I work specifically with a company called MB, Mountain Bike MB Capital Solutions. Um, they have they don't do like a pay up front. process. They do a pay if you get funded process, which I really appreciate, because you don't pay unless they get you money. So that's who I work with. But I've heard a lot of really good things about Fund and Grow as well too. So I haven't heard anything negative about Fund and Grow, put it that way. I've just never personally used them.
So Fund and Grow, are they similar to Kiavi? I've never heard of
Fund and
them.
Grow is just a personal business credit
Got it.
stacking type
Oh, okay,
thing.
okay,
So MB
okay.
Capital Solutions and Fund and Grow just do business credit and all that stuff. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I've never used them. Yeah, Kiavi, I've been hearing a lot of investors using them, like tons
Yeah.
and tons of investors. I didn't even know about their 3 million line of credit if you've done 5 deals in 24 months, which is
Yeah.
like doing a deal every 6 months, basically.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, that's crazy. I'm gonna go apply for that.
Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. I'm actually working to get their 100 with for all my students as well too right now. So it's going to be great.
Hmm. I know they were pretty aggressive with even with the interest rate on the rental properties. I've talked to some investors and they're giving even 30-year fixed loan a pretty comparable rate to even like large lenders, which I was like really surprised about. I know some investors have used them to get their loans on 30-year fixed rental properties, and
Yep.
when they told me the rate.
If you use them for the purchase and renovation capital, and then you flip it into their DSCR loan long term, first off, the refinance is stupid cheap, because the money is already with them. They just need to rewrite docs. And number
Mm.
two, I was seeing people get like 7.25
Yeah.
on DSCR 30-year fix, like on that flip, which is really
Yeah.
low considering where interest
Yeah.
rates been.
Yeah. I'm curious, you mentioned earlier that you have one provider that you work with who has been able to secure with the local lenders 30-year fixed at 5%. How is that possible? Like, is the lender still doing that 5%? How did that relation come about?
Yeah. So basically, they went to this local lender and said, "Hey, we will guarantee you 2 or 3 or $4 million a month in origination, generation." Right. And the locals lender said, "But in order to guarantee that, we need to um, get an interest rate of 5 or 5.25, whatever it is, and we want our investors to only have to put 20% down. They still have to qualify, like with income and credit
Right,
and all that
right, right.
stuff, right? But so basically, what happens is the provider pays up front for all the origination costs and fees. So basically, let's say they secure $2 million, the provider writes a check for $200,000 to secure all of the origination, and then they basically have that line to write deals for their rental properties on.
Oh, well, that's a pretty good idea to do that. But then you're
Yep.
committing to doing like 20 to 30 turnkey flips a month, basically, to
Yep.
get to that
Yep.
loan number. Yeah, cool. All right, guys, do you have any other question for John? I want to be respectful of his time, and also he's not feeling 100%. So,
Oh, I'm happy to answer anything,
yeah,
guys.
yeah.
I didn't want to kill too much time, but um, what can you guys share thoughts about a a flip? I've got a flip, but it's in a bad area, and I'm thinking about just flipping out of it because I don't want to necessarily be in a bad area for a rental. But what thoughts can you guys share about that if you guys were in my situation? Flipping a property in a bad area, but instead of actually flipping it, turning into a rental.
John, go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
more than happy to take that. For me personally, the area in which I invest in is going to really determine how many headaches that I have and the long-term viability of the property, right? It's the worse the area, the higher the maintenance, the higher the vacancy is going to be, just because of the caliber of resident that'll be living in the property. So, if it was a really bad area, I probably would just unload it, versus, keeping that headache long term. So that's my personal thought.
yeah. And for me, also, we own a property management company, and it's just, we have 4 employees, all of them are female. So before we buy in an area that we're not 100% confident with, I'll call my property manager and say, hey, would you manage this property? If they say no, we just don't even buy. But then, you know, as everything around in the market that we invest in getting expensive, some of the areas where honestly, like 3, 4 years ago, even if someone gave me a house for free, I would not buy it. Now we just bought a house a couple of months ago, 35. We're putting 100 into it. So we'll be all in for about 135, and the house will be worth about 225 to 250. The market has changed, but I just dropped a link to roofstock.com. That's John, I don't know if you've had any experience working with Roofstock, but you know, I mean, it's slowed down because of the higher interest rate, but we'll start listing our properties on Roofstock. It's basically a marketplace for turnkey providers and investors, high net worth individuals all across the country that are looking to buy turnkey properties. You could try listing it there. We've sold several properties, like dozens of properties on roofstock.com. These are people that you have no pre-existing relationship with. It just needs to be a good product. They do an inspection. So if you're able to do that and the cash flow makes sense, so you might get some luck finding that property. But at least in my experience, buying rental properties in an area that's not good, the numbers will look good up front, but you know, I've heard stories where the tenants move out and they take the furnace with them. They take the AC with them. Like those are the stories. It's not happened to us. I'm okay leaving a little bit of money on the table, but just like lagging the market a little bit where I feel comfortable buying in a market, because again, I live in San Diego area, investing in Indiana. So I'm okay not being super aggressive with the market that I'm buying in. So that it just works for me. But check out roofstock.com. It's been really good for us in the past.
Yeah, Roofstock's like the MLS for turnkey rental properties. Essentially,
exactly.
The only thing I always say about Roofstock is just do your due diligence on the management team along with the area, right? So they have, believe they have like a neighborhood rating, like A, B, C, whatever. But do your research on that. Do your research on the property management team that they're recommending, or potentially switch to a completely other one. But it makes looking for turnkey rentals very, very easy, if you will. So yeah, good stuff.
All right, Michael has a question. I have 28 doors in Northern Illinois. My goal is 50, then sell the portfolio. Can I still manage them on my own, or do you suggest hiring a management company? This is like with the goal of exiting his 50 properties.
Yeah, two things. I mean, one, you're going to probably see a higher value for the portfolio if it's professionally managed, because you can hand it off as a true turnkey, number one. Number two, I would have started handing those things off the property management company way before I got to 28. But my recommendation would be is you know, we don't want to go ham, right? I would rather learn that a property management team sucks with 2 of my houses than with 28 of them, right? So
that's a great point.
You know, I would say, you know, if let's say there's 3 property management teams that you're feeling very excited with, right? Like, give each one of them a couple properties, right, to manage them, see how their communication is, see how they, you know, do when they need to re-rent or release or something like that, and then manage the rest yourself until you've tested the one that you really like, and you're like, okay, this is the one, and then we move all of our properties there, versus, you know, finding out that they're not what they said they were, and we have 28 problems to deal with versus 2.
Yeah. And one other thing that I highly recommend is, if you can find out addresses of some of the properties they're managing, drive by. Like, if they're not in good condition, that's exactly what your properties are going to look like. You know, they're not going to do anything special, extra
100%.
special, less special for you. Just how they're managing any other properties is how your properties are going to look. So if you can somehow find out what other properties they're managing, 100% drive by. All right. Oscar has a question. Is there resource training for someone that wants to start their own in-house property management company?
Don't.
John, don't. Yeah, I was forced to do it because I had enough properties on my own. It was a headache, but man, it's such a tough business. Yeah. Oscar, do you have your own properties, or are you just looking to do it for others? You're on mute. You're not on mute, but for some reason you're not audible.
Yeah, property management is an interesting beast, right? You know, you have 2 clients, right? You have the investor as well as the residents, and you know, everybody has stuff going on in their lives that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, along with the house, right? So,
I mean,
great.
so he's gonna have 21 this month. Yeah, I mean, I think once you get to like 25, 30, where it makes, and not necessarily to like, start a property management company, but have someone in-house manage. John, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
Okay.
in-house, the
Oh, yeah.
average individual, and you can correct me on this as well, Sharad, if I feel like I overstep on numbers here, but what I've heard and seen is like an individual can usually, if it's their full-time gig, manage about 150 doors. And so you can bring someone in-house and just think of the basics, right? They have to be available to, answer maintenance calls and emails, right? So they have to be able to connect contractors, organize people going through the home, sign leases, do walkthroughs and re-sign leases or renew leases, right? So like, one thing where I would start would just be sitting down and creating kind of like a list of every duty that you would like to see someone do in order to manage your properties and how you would like to do it. And then once those duties are all laid out, then we create an SOP for each one of them, right? What is your leasing process, right? What is your releasing process? How early do you call them before the lease expires, right? So it's a lot, man. Like it's definitely a lot, but you can put someone in-house and you can pay them through the rent, right? Charge 8% management fee, which pays them directly, plus a kickback for new leases or releases and stuff like that. So you can incentivize them that way as well.
Yeah, one thing I will add to that number is like the number is what area your properties are in. If they're in like A-class property, that number, one individual would be able to manage more. If they're in D-class neighborhood, then you would need more people to manage that 150. So just keep that in mind, like, the property, the area, the kind of area your properties are in. But yeah, once you get to, I mean, I brought management in-house. Was any property management company you work with, they'll always have a markup on the repairs that they're doing, which is reasonable, which is understood. It takes their time and effort, which I'm okay with. But then the issue that we started running into was the property management company that we're working with, their family members were involved in the business, and you were not getting receipts and you were not getting that. And we decided to, and it was part of our turnkey business model also. Our clients started having bad experience, so we decided to bring it in-house. I would say like about that, the number that you're at, it makes sense. Again, depending on what the average rent is of a property, where it may make sense to have someone in-house, especially if you're going to buy more properties, because no one will manage your properties as well as you will manage them in-house. Just something to keep in mind. Yeah. 25, 30, again, depending on the average rent, is where I would start looking at bring it in-house and start negotiating with the contractors, have the same set of guys that are going like plumber, electricians, painters and stuff. The biggest thing would be need a really good handyman who can take care of the turnovers. And things that I would look at, that we look at in our property management company, is from the time property is vacant, how long does it take before someone goes out, gives us an estimate? From the time they give us an estimate, how long does it take before they start working on it? How long does it take to finish? How long is the property rented? Just so that we can see where we have inefficiencies in our business. And if you want to, Oscar, reach out to me, I can share some of the things we're doing in our property management company, share some SOPs that we're using, and then, that can give you a good starting point. Yeah, so a lot of that would depend on your average rent and other numbers that you have. Oh, yeah. And Michael said, great experience with Kiavi, by the way. Yeah, I've heard great things about Kiavi. Like, I have not heard anything bad about Kiavi, given how much money they're giving away. And he said, Residential Capital is another great program for rentals, which I've never heard of, but, that's another one to check out. Any other questions for John?
You guys mind if I ask another question?
Yeah,
Go
ahead,
for
man.
it.
So regarding the financing piece, John, do you and I'm sorry, I came a little bit late to the meeting. Do you once you do your refinances or even your purchases, do you use, I know you mentioned you use Kiavi, do you use any local lenders? And if so, what's that experience? And is there any advice on proper entity setup? Because one of the things that we realize is that we try to go through a local lender. We spend a bunch of time doing so. But of course, right, doing that versus a hard money lender, they look at all your financials, including every member of the entity. So that was our experience. We ended up wasting a bunch of time. At the end of the day, they didn't like our entity setup. and they ended up just not moving forward with the loan. And funny enough, we just ended up refinancing with Kiavi.
There you go.
And the terms weren't bad, right? To your point. But if we can get 2% lower or even avoid origination costs, that goes a long way. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it was a big portfolio for us, and we could have probably saved, I don't know, maybe like $20,000-$30,000 in
Yeah.
origination fees.
Yeah, I mean, as this market for lending grows, right? The fabled hometown banks are definitely getting squeezed in that regard, because of companies like Kiabi, where I think hometown banks kind of hold a, kind of silver ace in the hole on like larger banks is the ability to finance portfolios in a lot of ways. Now I know you kind of were in that process, right? And there can be a lot of hoops to jump through, but I still find that there is value in working with those banks. What I try to do is if I'm going to go into a market, I'm going to try to find and create all of the relationships I can, or at least kickstart those relationships prior to starting to buy properties, so I don't put myself in a position where my back's against the wall on closing day or something like that. But again, when I'm using a local lender, that's mostly only going to be for the refinance side of things. So usually I have time to put that deal together. But yeah, I think there's a place for it for sure. To use local lenders, I would encourage you to continue to reach out to them. The good part about local lenders is they can, kind of create their own loan products based on where they feel the risk is in the portfolio that they're lending on. The bad part about local lenders is they can create their own underwriting guidelines as well too, right? Where they're like, oh, we don't like this loan or this LLC structure, and you're like, what are you talking about, right? Like this is how everybody has this set up, right? So there's pros and cons with it as well too, but I would continue in that search for those types of lenders, versus just giving up because you had this one bad experience.
Yeah, I would agree. I own all my rental properties, or 95% of them are owned free and clear, but I have a line of credit from a local lender that I use for my flips. And then I'm also working with that local lender to do a cash out refinance on an 11 unit property that I bought. So it's much easier once you build that relationship. They'll give you a lot more flexibility. You get better interest rate in the long term, better terms with them on the long term, but it's just about building relationship. I mean, what I've done is in the past is like, if you're working with a local lender, they have more influence on the loan. They don't always, especially if it's a portfolio loan, where they just keep the loans in-house, then they have a lot more influence on the loan.
Yep.
I mean, honestly, like what I've done in the past is like local lender, I would just send them, a nice bottle of wine over holidays. Just like simple things, but they make a difference. I've personally noticed, like last 3 years, I was living in Canada, and this lender, was a little flexible with me being out of country, with some documentation and stuff, which, I provided them, but, with the timeline and stuff, definitely get a lot more leverage with them versus working with a bank like Chase or Bank of America, for example. So work on building those relationships. Like this is literally what I've done, send them a gift, bottle of wine. If they, once our loan goes through, I'm going to send this, the person that I'm working with, the bank, like a nice, a gift. And then they remember those things and they help you out down the road. I mean, I have his cell phone number now. He's a senior VP. If he has any questions, I mean, I just have to text him, hey, I'm buying this property. Can you send this wire to this title company? So it makes much easier to do business in the long term.
It's not the first time I hear that, so I think those are great suggestions.
Yeah. It's a pain to start the relationship, but the relationship will be
definitely
like, you won't be able to beat it long term.
Sure.
And I would talk to like few different local lenders and ask them, hey, this is what I'm doing, what sort of terms you can offer. And then you feel like one or two banks that you feel more comfortable with, and I'll try to build on those relationships.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Do you guys mind sharing what your entity structure looks like? Brief overview, of course.
Mine is pretty simple. I buy every property in a separate land trust, and then my LLC owns all the land trusts. And same thing for my flips. I have one flipping LLC. All the individual flips that I'm doing are owned in a land trust. Super simple. If we have a property under contract 123 Main Street, the entity will be 123 Main Street Land Trust. All my rental properties are in their own land trust. but one LLC owns all of the land trust. That's my entity structure. John, what about you?
Normally this never happens, but same exact one.
Yeah.
Usually when you put, 10 estate attorneys in one room, you'll get 10 different answers
Yeah.
on how to do this. But yeah, so I have my LLC, Juliana Investments, which is my rental property LLC that I own wholly. It is the owner of all of the land trusts that my rental properties reside in. So that's how it's set up.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys.
John, thank you so much for jumping on the call. I know you're not
Yeah.
feeling 100%, but I appreciate you taking time to, share your experience and answering questions here. It was a fantastic call. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
no
John,
worries, guys.
what's the best
Happy to
way
help.
for someone to connect with you, learn a little bit more about kind of what you've got going on?
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys have turnkey questions or want to talk about the different teams that I work with, you're more than welcome to reach out. The best way to reach me is John, JOHN, at rentalproppro.com. I will throw that in the chat here for you guys. It's in there. Just feel free to shoot me an email. Just say you saw me on the webinar here today, and we can connect and chat more about turnkey if you want.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, John. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for being on the call, asking great questions. See you guys on the next week call. Thanks. Bye.